The divorce papers were still warm from her hand when she laughed in my face. Not a laugh of relief, not even a laugh of cruelty, it was worse. It was casual, dismissive, like she was tossing aside an old receipt she no longer needed. 5 years of marriage dissolved into ink on paper, and she smirked as though my grief was beneath her notice. I sat there in the courthouse hallway, papers trembling in my hands, staring at the jagged curve of her signature. She wore her wealth like armor, a designer coat draped just so, heels clicking against the marble floor with a rhythm that sounded like triumph. My clothes, my posture, my silence made me look exactly what she'd always seen me as, a middle-class man lucky to orbit her. When she was gone, the air seemed heavier, pressing on my chest until I couldn't breathe. That's when my phone buzzed. Her. My best friend. Not her, the wife. The other was. The woman who'd known me since childhood, who'd been there through scraped knees and failed exams, who had always seemed to know when to call. Her message was short: pack a bag. I'm sending the jet. A part of me wanted to laugh at the absurdity. My wife had just left me bankrupt in spirit and near bankrupt in fact, and my best friend's solution was to throw luxury at me. But another part of me, a desperate, hollowed-out part, clung to the offer. I needed to escape. Hours later, I stood on the tarmac, wind whipping at my collar as her private jet gleamed beneath the floodlights. It felt unreal, stepping into that sleek metal bird, leather seats softer than any bed I'd slept on, champagne waiting in crystal flutes. And there she was, radiant in a way that wasn't about money, though money certainly dripped from every detail of her. She embraced me like I was the center of her world, and for a moment I almost believed it. Forget her, she whispered, holding me too tightly. She never deserved you. But I do. I laughed nervously, trying to shake off the strangeness of her phrasing. The jet hummed, and soon we were airborne, champagne bubbles rising like promises I didn't trust but drank anyway. She kept brushing her hand against mine, leaning too close, watching me with eyes that felt less like comfort and more like hunger. When we landed at her estate, a sprawling mansion of glass and stone perched above the ocean, I tried to tell myself this was generosity, nothing more. She led me through echoing halls, chandeliers blazing, her heels clicking a rhythm not unlike my wife's earlier. My gut twisted. Her hospitality was overwhelming, closets already stocked with clothes in my size, a room prepared with photographs of us from years ago, framed and waiting. Too much. Too eager. And in the wine glass she pressed into my hand, I saw a faint crack running through the crystal. I couldn't look away from it. That night, as I wandered sleepless through the mansion, I heard her voice. Low, hushed, drifting through the crack of her half-closed study door. Yes, he's here. He doesn't even realize he's mine already. The words froze me in place. My throat went dry, my hand tightening around the banister. Mine already. I stumbled back into the shadows, heart pounding louder than the waves crashing against the cliffs outside. I wasn't born into the kind of world that uses private jets like taxis. My world was rusted pickup trucks, coupons clipped from the Sunday paper, and long nights where the electric bill determined whether we ate takeout or boxed macaroni. My father broke his back at the factory, my mother scrubbed floors until her knuckles bled, and I carried those images with me like scars. We weren't miserable. But we were ordinary. Painfully, relentlessly ordinary. I grew up believing I'd claw my way into something better. And when I met her, the woman who would become my wife, I thought I had done exactly that. She was luminous from the first moment. Elegant, sharp-tongued, eyes that gleamed with the confidence of someone who never worried about rent. She didn't notice me at first. Why would she? I was a middle-class nobody, ambitious but unpolished. But when she did notice, God, it was intoxicating. She treated me like a project, though I didn't see it then. She refined my wardrobe, corrected my posture, told me which wines to pretend I liked. She wanted me to fit into her world, and I mistook that for love. I thought her criticism was attention, her molding was devotion. I was blind, willfully blind, because the alternative was facing the truth, that she wanted me as a shadow to highlight her glow, not as an equal. I devoted myself to her. Every ounce of my time, every dollar I scraped together, every bit of loyalty I had. She was my universe. And in return, I was her experiment. But I wasn't completely alone in the world. There was her, my best friend. We'd known each other since we were kids, when scraped knees and secret forts meant more than money or pedigree. She was the kind of friend who threw punches at bullies on my behalf, who dared me to jump from cliffs into rivers, who carried my secrets like weapons. She'd always been protective, sometimes to a fault. There was a fierceness in her loyalty that made me feel chosen, even special. But even as children, I noticed streaks of something else in her. Manipulation. A way of twisting games so she always won. She could smile while stacking the deck, and I admired it, even envied it. She taught me how to cheat at cards, how to fake tears to get out of trouble. She was always 2 steps ahead, even when it came to me. When I married, she didn't protest. At least, not openly. She smiled at the wedding, toasted us with champagne, but her eyes lingered too long on the bride. There were moments, fleeting, but sharp, when I'd catch the two of them sharing a look. A glance too intimate, a smirk too knowing. I told myself I was imagining it. That was the beginning of my blindness, the crack in the foundation I refused to see. I never belonged in my wife's world. At parties, I hovered at the edges while she dazzled the crowd. She'd dismiss me with a flick of her hand if I tried to join in. Sometimes I'd retreat to the bar, nursing a drink, and I'd see my best friend across the room, watching me. Not with sympathy, but with something else, something closer to possession. As though I wasn't a husband at all, just a thing passed between them. There were rumors, whispers from mutual acquaintances that my wife was seen in places she shouldn't be, with people she shouldn't know. I dismissed them. I told myself love meant trust. I told myself I wasn't paranoid. But looking back, it was all there. The seeds of betrayal, scattered so carelessly I'd have had to be blind not to see them sprout. And I was. The night after I heard her on the phone, the friend whispering he doesn't even realize he's mine already, I couldn't sleep. My mind replayed every look, every laugh, every strange moment I'd brushed aside. I wandered her mansion, letting the silence close in on me like a coffin. That's when I found it. In one of the guest rooms, one prepared for me, with my clothes neatly folded in drawers, as though I'd always belonged there, I noticed a dresser drawer that didn't shut properly. I tugged it open. Beneath neatly pressed shirts that weren't mine, a stack of photographs lay hidden. At first, I thought they were harmless. Old party shots, gatherings we'd all attended. But then I pulled one free. My wife. My best friend. Not posed as friends, not smiling for a crowd, but close, too close. My wife's head tilted on my friend's shoulder, their hands clasped beneath the table as if caught off guard by the camera. Intimate. Secret. The room spun around me. My throat tightened. I shuffled through the stack, each photograph worse than the last. Whispered smiles. Lingering touches. A private world between them, captured in still frames, hidden in the house where I now slept. I gripped the edges of the photo until it bent, my nails nearly tearing through the paper. My pulse thundered in my ears. This wasn't new. This wasn't sudden. This betrayal had been growing for years, and I'd been the blind fool watering it with my devotion. I sat on the edge of the bed in the guest room, the stack of photographs spread across my lap like evidence at a trial. My wife's smile, bright, unguarded, was one I hadn't seen in years, at least not directed at me. Her hand curled possessively around my best friend's wrist in one, her lips brushing against her ear in another. Each picture whispered what I had refused to hear for years. The laughter in the courthouse, the whisper in the study, suddenly, it all aligned like teeth in a predator's jaw. She had been cheating for years. My marriage, my devotion, my blind loyalty, it had all been her shield. While I stayed home polishing the scraps of the life she allowed me, she was with her. My best friend. My supposed protector. I wanted to tear the photos apart, to scatter the pieces across the marble floor and scream until the walls cracked. But instead I sat frozen, pulse hammering, the taste of metal thick in my mouth. It wasn't just an affair. It was the complicity. My friend hadn't just been a witness, she'd been her accomplice. How many times had I texted her when I couldn't reach my wife, panicked, worried. And how calmly she had reassured me. Don't worry, she's tied up at work. Don't be insecure. She loves you, you know that. Lies woven so smoothly I never thought to tug at the thread. And now, with my wife gone, she wanted me. Claimed me. As though I were nothing more than an object passed from one pair of hands to another. You're mine now. The words replayed in my skull, twisting tighter each time. The humiliation came in waves, hot and dizzying. Every anniversary dinner I'd planned, every flower I'd bought, every night I stayed awake convincing myself her coldness was stress, not rejection. It all became a grotesque comedy. I was the fool in the center ring, clapping while they laughed behind the curtain. I couldn't stop pacing. The mansion seemed to expand around me, corridors stretching into infinity, every surface whispering that I didn't belong. Her wealth, her influence, her certainty, it pressed down on me like a hand on the back of my neck. I had nothing. No money. No home. Not even a marriage to cling to anymore. And here I was, in her house, dependent on her kindness, or her control. I began to spiral. Every sound became suspicious. The staff glanced at me as if they knew, the locked doors in the East Wing, the phone calls she always took out of earshot. I'd never felt so stripped, so naked of agency. Even my grief didn't belong to me anymore, it felt orchestrated, manipulated, like they had choreographed my collapse together. One evening, unable to contain the bile rising in my chest, I confronted her. I cornered her in the glass-walled kitchen as she poured herself wine, my voice shaking. How long? She looked up, calm, as if I'd asked her the time of day. How long is it? You and her. My throat burned. How long were you laughing at me? For a moment, just a flicker, something shifted in her expression. Then she smiled. Slow, deliberate. Long enough. The stem of her glass caught the light as she raised it, as though mocking the cracked one she'd given me earlier. But she's gone now. And you're still here. With me. Isn't that what matters? I staggered back, bile rising, rage clawing at my chest. I was your friend. You still are, she said, her tone firm, commanding. Don't confuse what she did to you with what I'm offering. She used you. I want you. It was too much. The room tilted, and I grabbed the counter to steady myself. Used. Wanted. The words sliced through me like razors, carving away any illusion that I had ever mattered to either of them. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw their hands entwined beneath the table, their smiles meant for each other. I replayed conversations, moments when my wife had cancelled plans, when my friend had reassured me. I heard their laughter overlaying mine, cruel and private. By morning, my paranoia had grown claws. I needed answers. I needed to know how deep the rot went. I started digging. While she was out, I prowled her study, her office, her drawers. I told myself I was looking for proof, though the photographs were already proof enough. What I found turned my stomach cold. Emails. Dozens of them. My wife and my friend correspond, not just about their trysts, but about me. Where I'd be on certain nights. What excuses she should give. How to soothe me when I grew suspicious. And then the real gut punch, references to my career. Opportunities I'd never received, jobs I thought I'd been rejected from. In one email, my wife bragged about redirecting a potential promotion so I'd remain dependent on her. In another, my friend discussed pulling strings to ensure I stayed in my lane. They had orchestrated it all. Not just my marriage, but my future. I sat there, staring at the screen, my breath coming in shallow bursts. It wasn't just betrayal. It was sabotage. Every step I thought I had taken on my own was actually a leash they had tightened around my throat. Friends I thought I'd lost to time, they'd poisoned those, too. One email detailed how my wife had whispered doubts into mutual acquaintances' ears, planting seeds of distrust. My best friend had done the same, weaving me into a narrative of insecurity and failure. They had cut me off, piece by piece, until all I had left was them. And now, only one remains. I pressed a hand to my face, nails digging into my skin, trying to ground myself against the vertigo. The betrayal wasn't just about love. It was about control. My wife had stripped me of dignity, my friend had stripped me of independence. Together, they had built a cage around me, brick by brick, and laughed while I decorated the inside. And now she wanted me to believe the cage was a gift. The realization settled in like poison. This had never been about love. It had always been about ownership. Grief had nearly drowned me. Rage had burned me raw. But after the storm came something sharper, something I hadn't felt in years, clarity. They had underestimated me. Both of them. My wife with her condescending smirks, my best friend with her possessive whispers. I was the fool in their story, the project, the puppet. But there's one thing fools are good at, being ignored. And invisibility, I realized, was my weapon. While she, my so-called friend, paraded me through her mansion like a trophy she'd rescued, I started paying attention. Not to her words, but to the cracks in between them. To the late-night phone calls she thought I couldn't hear. To the drawers she left unlocked because she assumed I wouldn't look. To the careless arrogance of the wealthy who believe privacy is their birthright. I began collecting. First, the photographs. I didn't destroy them. I catalogued them. Took pictures with my phone, uploaded them to a cloud account under a name she'd never suspect. Each image a piece of ammunition, each frame a reminder of the intimacy they thought would stay hidden. Then, the emails. I memorized her passwords, watched how her fingers moved across the keys, noticed the pattern she favored when resetting codes. Within days, I had access. A treasure chest of deceit spilled open before me, evidence of my wife's betrayals, my friends' manipulations, their shared conspiracy. I archived everything, duplicated it, stored it in layers of redundancy. I was no longer their victim. I was their historian, their chronicler, their executioner in waiting. But information alone wasn't enough. If revenge was going to matter, it couldn't just be about exposure. It had to hurt. It had to unspool them from the inside out. So I staged vulnerability. I let her think I was still broken, still desperate for comfort. When she brushed against me at dinner, I flinched just enough to make her believe she was winning me over. When she pressed another glass of wine into my hand, I drank half and let the rest slip down the sink when she wasn't looking. She thought I was numb, pliable. She thought I was already hers. And while she thought that, I was listening. Recording. Every whispered conversation on her balcony, every phone call she didn't know I'd tapped with a small device hidden in her study. I became obsessed with the details, where she sat when she spoke on the phone, which words she emphasized, how her voice dropped when she lied. I baited her, too. I'd mention my wife's name, watch the flicker of irritation cross her face. I'd ask casual questions about old friends, note which ones made her shift uncomfortably. Each response gave me another thread to pull. At night, I mapped it all out. Pages upon pages of notes, diagrams of their connections, timelines of deceit. My handwriting grew frantic, cramped, as though my rage was spilling through the pen. But beneath the frenzy was order. A strategy. Step 1, isolate them. If they had built their power in tandem, I would turn them against each other. Plant seeds of doubt, feed them lies disguised as truths, truths disguised as lies. Make them question loyalty. Step 2, control the narrative. Wealth thrives on image. Reputation is currency. I would bleed them not with knives, but with whispers. Step 3, strike publicly. Secrets rot in the dark, but exposure is fatal in the light. But even as I outlined the steps, I knew I needed something more. Something devastating. A weapon they couldn't anticipate, one that would obliterate their illusion of untouchable superiority. And then, one night, I found it. It wasn't in her emails or the photographs. It wasn't in her careless whispers or drunken slips of the tongue. It was in an old locked drawer in her study, a place I hadn't searched before. The key hung on a necklace she wore, which she discarded only when she showered. I waited, timed her routine, and when the moment came, I slipped the chain from her nightstand and opened the drawer. Inside was a folder, thick with documents. Financial records. Bank transfers. Not just hers, but my wife's. Hidden accounts, offshore holdings, money that shouldn't exist. But that wasn't the scandalous part. The names. Politicians. Judges. CEOs. Bribes dressed as consulting fees, payouts labeled as charitable contributions. And there, nestled among them, a transaction that tied directly to my wife's father, a man whose spotless public image was the foundation of their family's empire. If this came out, it wouldn't just ruin my wife. It wouldn't just ruin my friend. It would scorch their entire world, burn down the delicate web of wealth and power they clung to. I sat there in the study, a folder spread open before me, hands trembling, not from fear this time, but from anticipation. This was it. My secret weapon. Not a knife. Not a gun. Not even the photographs or the emails. This was the match that could set fire to their dynasty. And for the first time since the courthouse, since the laugh that shattered me, I smiled. When you've been treated like a fool long enough, you learn something important. Fools can move unseen. People don't guard themselves against what they don't respect. That was my greatest advantage. They never expected me to fight back. And when I finally struck, it wasn't a knife in the dark. It was a stage, a spotlight, and an audience. The night of the gala shimmered with wealth. Chandeliers glittered like constellations above silk gowns and black tie arrogance. My wife was there, radiant as always, draped on the arm of another man already, parading her freedom, pretending her cruelty was glamour. I watched from the edges, invisible as ever, a glass of champagne sweating in my hand. I had timed everything perfectly. The photographs, the emails, the financial documents. I had arranged them into a presentation disguised as a charity auction highlight reel. No one knew the difference until the screen lit up. At first, the crowd murmured in confusion. Then gasps spread like wildfire. On the giant screen above the stage, my wife, smiling, hand in hand with my best friend in those stolen photographs. Her private betrayal displayed in cruel, frozen clarity for the same high society sycophants she once dazzled. She went pale, then flushed crimson, her perfect composure cracking in real time. Her new man dropped her arm like she was radioactive. Whispers thickened into laughter. I drank it. Years of humiliation condensed into one sharp inhale as the audience saw her for what she was, not a goddess, not untouchable, but a liar. Her eyes found mine across the room, wide with recognition, with fury. But I only raised my glass to her. A silent toast. Mini payoff. The photographs humiliated her, but humiliation fades. Money doesn't. So I turned to the documents, the offshore accounts, the bribes, the threads that tied her family's empire to corruption. Through a burner laptop in a cafe miles away, I sent copies to journalists, regulators, and rivals. Carefully staggered leaks, timed like drops of poison. Each headline struck like a hammer: Family Dynasty under investigation for fraud. Anonymous documents reveal hidden offshore accounts. And as the stories spread, the storm bled into her ally, my best friend. Her estate was entangled in the same web of accounts, her name buried in the transfers. Suddenly her wealth wasn't power anymore, it was evidence. I didn't even need to watch the news to know what was happening. I could feel it in the way her staff whispered behind closed doors, in the tension that seeped into her mansion like smoke. She began taking more calls in hushed tones, pouring herself more wine than usual, her control fraying. Another mini payoff. But I wasn't done. The real poison wasn't money or reputation, it was mistrust. They had built their power together, against me, but all I needed was one fracture between them. I began planting seeds. Anonymous texts to my wife, she told me everything. You think you're the only one. Anonymous emails to my friend, she's selling you out to save herself. Watch her back. I baited them, fed them half-truths laced with undeniable detail. Things only they would know. Secrets they had whispered about me in the dark, turned back on them like knives. Soon, their alliance began to unravel. My wife stopped returning her calls. My friend paced the halls at night, muttering into her phone, suspicion dripping from every syllable. The trust they'd once wielded as a weapon dissolved into paranoia. And I, the fool, the pawn, the man they thought broken beyond repair. I watched them burn each other alive. Another mini payoff. But revenge isn't just about the spectacle. It's about the silence after, when the world tilts and the victim realizes the walls are closing in. I made sure she knew. I let my friend catch me looking at her too long, listening when she thought I wasn't. I left subtle traces of my presence in her study, an unlocked drawer she swore she'd closed, a document missing and then replaced. Little things to make her doubt herself. She grew restless. Snapped at the staff. Asked me one night, have you been going through my things? Her eyes were sharp, desperate. I only smiled. Why would I? She didn't answer. But I could see the question gnawing at her. Every word I spoke became a trap. Every silence is a blade. I was in her head now, worming my way into the cracks of her arrogance until paranoia hollowed her out. Another mini payoff. The humiliation of my wife. The financial sabotage of my friend. The social exposure that set them against each other. Each step was calculated, each strike deliberate. But I saved the most dangerous move for last, the confrontation. One night, I waited for her in the mansion's great hall. The storm outside rattled the glass walls, lightning tearing open the sky. I knew she'd come down eventually. When she did, she looked smaller than I'd ever seen her. Not the confident protector of my youth, not the manipulator who had whispered on the phone. Just a woman whose empire was collapsing around her, a glass of wine trembling in her hand. You did this, she spat, though her voice broke halfway. I didn't deny it. I stepped closer, slow, deliberate, until we were face to face. I could smell the wine on her breath, the panic clinging to her skin. Her lips curled into something that wasn't quite a smile. You think you've won? You think you've taken something from me? I said nothing. Just watched her. And then she leaned closer, her voice a whisper, low and venomous. You were always mine. You still are. The words coiled around me like chains, and for a heartbeat, I couldn't tell if she was right. Her whisper clung to the air like smoke. You were always mine. You still are. For a moment, I felt the old chains tighten around my chest, the childhood bond, the false protection, the years of being molded and managed. She wanted me to believe it, to sink back into the role she had carved out for me, the loyal fool, the possession, the prize she could hold up when everything else collapsed. But I wasn't the same man who had walked into her mansion, hollow-eyed from betrayal. I wasn't the man who had signed divorce papers with shaking hands. I had burned those versions of myself down, piece by piece, until what remained was sharper, harder. And I had saved my sharpest blade for last. I pulled my phone from my pocket. She tensed, wine sloshing over the rim of her glass. "What is that?" she asked, but her voice was brittle, frayed at the edges. I tapped the screen. The small light blinked red. Recordings. Every whispered phone call, every drunken confession, every slip of the tongue. Layer upon layer of her own voice betraying her, feeding the fire I had already set. Her face was drained of color. "You wouldn't." "I already did." Her glass slipped from her hand and shattered against the marble floor, the wine spreading like blood at her feet. That was the moment she understood. The gala had been a humiliation, the financial leaks a ruin, but this was annihilation. With these recordings, her lies couldn't be buried, her defenses couldn't be rebuilt. It wasn't just her fortune at stake, or her reputation. It was her power over me. Gone. She staggered back, bracing herself against the counter, eyes darting as though searching for some final manipulation, some way to twist me back into her orbit. But there was nothing left for her to grasp. "I gave you everything," she hissed, but the words rang hollow. "No," I said, my voice steady. "You took everything. And you thought I wouldn't notice." Silence fell heavy between us. Outside, the storm cracked open the night sky. Inside, she was already broken. And my wife, she was finished too. By now, the fallout of the gala and the financial leaks had spread like wildfire. Her family's empire was ash, her carefully curated image in ruins. The two of them had nothing left but each other, and even that bond one had poisoned beyond repair. I walked out of the mansion that night without looking back. The days that followed felt strange, hollow in their quietness. Revenge had been my fuel, my oxygen, my reason to keep breathing when the humiliation threatened to crush me. Now that it was done, I expected to feel triumphant. Instead, I felt scared. But scars are proof of survival. I wasn't rich. I wasn't powerful. I had no mansion, no dynasty, no jet waiting for me on the tarmac. What I had was mine. My voice. My independence. My clarity. I had spent years being shaped by them, diminished by them, controlled by them. Now, standing alone, stripped of the illusions I once clung to, I understood something I never had before: freedom isn't about wealth or power. It's about refusing to belong to anyone but yourself. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't someone's project. I wasn't someone's pawn. I wasn't someone's possession. I was my own. For the first time, I wasn't someone's possession. I was my own.